Hello, Bjorn. How are you? Always, usually first or second. Definitely first by a long shot today. So good job there. So as usual, we'll give it a few minutes for people to roll in, and then we'll get started here. If anybody has any questions, feel free while I sit here and stare at my phone. New on funding. So I'm just in the process of finalizing today a proposal um, for an investor that's actually on both sides. So they're on CoinMetro and CSD, and that's a large ticket split between both entities. So it's not everything we're looking for in phase one, which is this initial proposal. Phase two of this proposal would cover absolutely everything that we're looking for. Phase two would probably be 6 months from now. Capital, though, that would come in phase one would cover us all the way through those 6 months and allow us to delve into a few extra projects. So that's going to be sent out today. I'll probably have a discussion over the weekend, and next week, there's the possibility here to move quite quickly. So next week we may even, get a green light and start moving. There's also another proposal, which is basically similar to this one, which will probably go out next week to some investors based here in Europe. And then I'm dealing with one other. I have a phone call actually today at roughly 7 p.m. with a group of other investors also based in Europe. And we've been in talks now for a few months back and forth. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. It was yesterday, but we didn't speak yesterday, or I wasn't here yesterday, so I wasn't here on the AMA yesterday. So thank you for that. Thank you, Prorej. Probably butchering that up, but Prorej, we'll say. So L2M asking if I'm satisfied with the number of users, volume, and progress of platform. So there's many ways to look at that question. So if I'm an outside guy, just looking at volumes on the exchange, and I'm assuming the amount of users, I might not be overly impressed, right? But from the inside, I am satisfied. Yes, I'm satisfied with our progress. We've been able since the beginning of the year to kind of really fine tune our from where it was, fine tune our development process. We've gotten multiple products pushed out live. We're working on multiple new products. We've done this on a shoestring budget. So in that aspect, I say yes, I'm happy. Could it be better? Yeah, anything could be better, guys. No matter how fast, slow, good, bad, whatever you can always do better. Volumes, look, obviously everybody wants to see more volumes, but when I look to see how we're working on this infrastructure play on the CSD, how we're starting to make inroads into an MTF CSD pilot in various regions of the world under sandbox framework that in one specific country we will basically create with the regulator. No one else is doing that, guys. No one else is really going down that road, and that's really the big prize. So I think that yeah, every one of those users, volume, and progress could always be better. Users and volume, however, look right now, no matter how much really effort we put into users and volume, we probably wouldn't be able to be self-sufficient because we need to get through that next step of development. So either way, guys, no matter what we would do, it wouldn't get us there. If we spend all the money on marketing and only had one product, we still wouldn't be self-sufficient. So because we'd have to do around 3 to 4 million a day. Well, if we're paying makers, it might even be upwards of 5 to 6 million a day if we're paying makers on every order. And no matter what we were doing, we wouldn't probably have gotten that market share. So I'm happy with what we've done, spending the money on development, focusing on development, and now we're at the we're just about ready to be at the tipping point to where we get an additional push of money in, and that's going to allow us to create something that hasn't been created before, something that really creates a new capital market. So I'm excited about that. QWERTY WTFLOL. When will CoinMetro release a stablecoin fiat pairing? Yeah, we are in talks with one particular stablecoin project that I actually like, that I think has some merits. And it's a unique project because it'll give us exposure to lots of different stable coins without having to have exposure to lots of different stable coins. So I think it's possible that before the end of the summer being, let's say, end of August into September, that we may have a stablecoin pairing. Do you have any exclusivity protection when you share with the authority of Montenegro on the CST stuff? Well, we don't share. We share with them enough to show them what we're planning to do. We obviously don't share anything proprietary or things that would allow them to be able to do this on their own. And yes, there will be NDAs in place. We would have some type of protection inside the sandbox, meaning that when we're in the sandbox, no other company with the exact same offering would be able to come inside the sandbox, meaning there wouldn't be multiple CSDs in the same sandbox. What if they tell you to put a stop to it, put 6 months down the road, one of the friends' relatives are using the same intellectual property that you share with them? We're not going to share intellectual property. The IP of the company will be only held by the founders, and no one, not even the authorities, will have access to that IP. So the IP will remain private 100%. There will just be a perpetual license between that and the operating entity. When is TAM and margin posting? Margin posting is actively being worked on right now. I just saw some new GUIs and screenshots of proposed mock-ups of proposed GUIs earlier today. Stephen has been knocking those out based on feedback that we have on our Slack channel for developing that product. TAM is also being worked on by our mobile team. One of the heads of our mobile team, Giovanni, doing a great job putting together TAM. There's some things that still need to be reworked on some of those mock-ups for TAM, and it's from a tech side. Margin posting will probably happen first. I think we're still on schedule there. I think we have about 4 weeks before, because it was I think an 8-week process. 8 to 12, I think, is what we initially quoted. So I think we're 4 to 6 weeks roughly from margin posting, and TAM would follow after that. All right, guys, so let's run into the normal show since we spent a few minutes here, and now we got some people in the room. So if you haven't been here before, my name is Kevin Murcko. I'm CEO here at CoinMetro. I'm sitting in my office, inside of our office in Tallinn, Estonia. You'll see the infamous meme wall behind me. We have a little agenda we like to follow here. We start off with market news. These are 10 pieces of market news that were curated over the last week by some of our Telegram community members. Thanks for that, guys. Then we run into, I do about a minute on each. I try to keep it to a minute. So roughly 10 minutes, that part of the show. Then we do Kevin Explains Crypto. There's usually a phrase or a word that I try to basically explain in layman's terms what it means, crypto-related term, usually. Then we do our live Q&A, which is here on YouTube. So you pop in your questions here it's my right, might be your left, I don't know. And then we roll into Reddit questions as well. So this week for Reddit questions, let me see where we stand here. Only 4 people asked questions, maybe 6 questions in there total. So we should be able to get to the Reddit questions as well. I'm going to start by jumping into news. So here we go, guys. Then I'll get back. So if you post your questions, I'll always scroll back. You can post your questions as we go. I'll scroll back and answer them once we get into that live Q&A part, which will probably be in roughly 12 to 15 minutes. So here we go. Market news number one on a list of 10. We have Trump administration says cryptocurrency a national security issue. So Mnuchin, Secretary of the Treasury, didn't actually say that cryptocurrency is a national security issue. What he said is that one of the things that the Treasury does is to ensure that AML policies are followed between all different types and levels of finance. And that they do that because they want to make sure they can track terrorist funding, and they can track funding for, all types of criminal activity, because if they can't track it, it can become a national security issue. So what he's saying is that not applying applicable laws to crypto could make it a national security issue. And I agree with that 100%. I've said this a million times. I'll say it again. We have all the laws we need, guys. They just need to apply them. And people that assume that they shouldn't be applied, well, you're starting to see now, Binance getting rid of US guys. You're starting to see even IDEX starting to do KYC. These things are going to happen, and they will continue to happen. And it's not because I have some crystal ball. It's because this was what happens in regulated finance. No one, look, even if you're a privacy nut, do you want criminal money to be able to be laundered in an easy way, right? Do you want your kids to have be sitting next to someone on a bus that may be strapped with a bomb because somebody decided, whether that's through PayPal, whether it's through crypto, whether it's through cash, if we can mitigate that risk, we should mitigate it. And yeah, it's a little bit of fear-based politics, guys, but this is the world we live in. People fund a lot of nasty shit using methods that are somewhat anonymous. So you can be a privacy nut. Look, I like my privacy too, but if I have to give up a bit of privacy to make sure that I'm safe on the street, then I have to make a decision whether I think that's the correct thing to do. And I think as you get older, you start to realize that giving up a bit of privacy to make sure you're safe is not all that bad of an idea. Number 2 on a list of 10, Facebook says it won't launch Libra until regulators are happy. I would say this is the no shit Sherlock statement of the week. Obviously, they won't launch it because they won't be able to, because basically they'll have so much pushback that they'll probably get hit with fines that are larger than their actual income. So we'll get on Libra a little bit later, but let's just put it this way. Libra is structured as a hedge fund. That's kind of one of the major plays. And it's also structured kind of like a central bank, because it can create monetary policy on an asset that could be traded or used by one of the largest populous masses in the world. And they are able to monetize it by holding reserves. That's exactly what a central bank does. So the reason why the US is kind of so squirmy about this issue is not so much Libra in and of itself. It's the structure and how it mimics a central bank. And I think that's probably going to change a bit, and that's how they kind of get around the scrutiny. Number 3 on a list of 10, Bitcoin maximalists celebrate Ethereum's demise as Ethereum developers are having trouble scaling the Ethereum blockchain. Is that really news, guys, that Ethereum's having trouble scaling? I think that's pretty much been the case since they launched it. Look, these are technology issues, right? Technology issues can be hard to solve, right? People can bang their heads against the wall, scratch their heads, I don't know, till they're blue in the face. But eventually, if there's enough knowledge, enough brain power on the case, it will be solved. So whether, that doesn't mean Ethereum solves it, but somebody's going to solve it. And as soon as somebody solves it, the nature of this tech, in that most of it is probably going to be open source anyway, will mean that eventually it gets solved. And then that solution basically permeates, whether it's through a commercial relationship or through open source software, and everybody solves the issue. So I don't know why. That's kind of like saying, Toyota celebrates because Ford cars suck or something like that. I mean, come on, guys, we can all exist here. Bitcoin definitely has a very different use case scenario than Ethereum. So why should you be happy if you're a Bitcoin maximalist if Ethereum fails, and vice versa? Why would you be happy if Bitcoin failed and you're an Ethereum maximalist? Doesn't necessarily mean the price point of your own asset's going to go up at all, actually. Number 4 on the list of 10, TokenX. That's Bitfinex and ETHFinex token sale platform. Token sale sells out in 35 seconds, 5 million. So anytime I read a news story now that mentions Bitfinex, I think it's a bullshit. So you can take that for whatever you want. That's an opinion on my side. Their $1 billion token raise right after they were told that there was an $850 million hole by the New York State Attorney General, that nice one. Oh, and then the fact they printed another $1 billion in Tether, and then accidentally printed $5 billion when they only meant to do 50 million. Look, these guys are just ridiculous. So, I mean, if they can sell out $1 billion, supposedly, I guess selling 5 million worth of tokens, so what, right? Anyway, I think these guys are just covering holes and trying to cover their tracks. The guy from Bitfinex owns, I don't know, 400 million in property around the world, couple passports. He's getting ready for when he knows the heat's getting too much. And I really don't know why he keeps adding heat onto himself, but I think the guy's a bit cocky, but we'll see what happens in the end. But anything I read with Bitfinex nowadays, I just don't believe right off the face of it. I don't even have to read the article, just don't believe it. Number 5 on a list of 10, regulators give nod to non-custodial exchanges. This is actually not really true. They didn't give the nod. What they're saying is that I think the act is 1972, maybe, where basically financial entities have to segregate capital, client capital, non-client capital, segregated accounts. The irony here is that in the client segregated account under US law, they're not like trust accounts, right? Which means that the company still has access, which means I can take all the money out of the client account and send it to an account in the Caymans. The bank's not going to stop me. It just means that from an accounting perspective or from a risk perspective, meaning the company goes bankrupt, the funds in the client fund account cannot be used to pay the debts of the company. That's about where the protection ends. But anyway, getting back to this story, regulators, basically what they said is that if, there's an issue right now with exchanges getting hacked. So they'd like to see more segregation of assets. I don't know how that stops hacking, because if you segregate the assets, then, and the exchanges, let's say only the exchange is known to have, I don't know, 50 million in their own accounts, but there's 7 billion in client accounts. Where do you think the hackers are going to attack? I mean, segregation doesn't stop hacking. So that's kind of stupid. But what they're trying to say here is that if you have a non-custodial exchange, then this particular issue where they're looking at segregated accounts doesn't really come into play, because, well, you're not holding client funds. But it doesn't mean that they're giving the nod like, oh yeah, you guys can do whatever you want with non-custodial, no KYC, no whatever, who cares? All they're saying is that for this particular issue, and to be honest, what they're saying to apply this regulation from the 70s about segregating accounts, which businesses should do anyway, just because for an accounting reason more than anything else, doesn't stop hacking. So it's rather ridiculous. Number 6 on a list of 10, despite divisions over corporate tax policy, G7 takes unified stand against cryptocurrencies. Again, this one's a little overblown. They didn't take a unified stand against cryptocurrency. What they basically said is that no one in the G7 should allow a private entity to basically have the same rights as a sovereign government by creating their own currency. That's kind of what they say. And again, this is obviously pointed toward Libra, right? Because it's not decentralized fully. It's not, they would be saying the same thing about Bitcoin, to be honest, but who are they going to send that letter to? Satoshi? I mean, there is no central counterpoint, so they can't really make the argument. Here, they're making the argument against Libra. And again, guys, it's kind of a failed argument right from the get-go, but it's not that they're standing against cryptocurrency. They're standing against something that would create a centralized, central bank-like power that doesn't sit inside a sovereign government. Like I just said before, it's because they structured Libra kind of like a central bank, and that's probably going to have to change. Number 7 on the list of 10, Rubini, my buddy. Crypto exchanges are financial scams. So he was, my buddy Rubini, we actually had this discussion when I sat down with him. He's basically talking about BitMEX here, and for the most part. He's talking about highly leveraged, non-regulated assets that are being targeted direct to, as the owner of Arthur Hayes has said, degenerate gamblers or retail guys who lose their shirt, and BitMEX makes a ton of money on liquidations. I would say Rubini's 100% correct here. In the fact that it's a scam, people love to use that word. It's not a scam, but it's an unregulated market that's being targeted toward people that they know will lose money. And to be honest, it probably shouldn't exist. And it shouldn't, and I don't say that because they're competitors, because I don't really look at them as competitors. They don't really do anything to add any benefit to the overall crypto movement. They don't add liquidity to the deliverable assets. They're not really promoting the use of crypto. They're promoting gambling on an asset that is illiquid and leveraged at 100 to 1 and synthetic, that they basically can control pricing on. That's just ridiculous, guys. So Rubini has a point. Some of the things he says in there are a bit controversial. Again, the guy lacks a bit of vision when it comes to the future of these markets, or if they have a future. But his point about Bitfinex, I'm sorry to say, is accurate. Number 8 on the list of 10, accidental print leads to consequent burn of 5 billion USDT. Yeah, I mentioned this already. So one of my compliance guys, Pavel, he's sitting over here. You can't see him, but anyway, he actually corrected this one. They didn't actually. They did mint or try to or print whatever 5 billion USDT, but it was a fat finger mistake. Apparently, they only wanted to print 50 million, so they basically burnt the remainder. So that's 4,950,000,000 basically. So yeah, these guys are shady as shit. I mean, that's all I can say. I mean, Tether is shady. There's no way it's backed by pretty much anything. Everybody that's in cahoots there knows it's shady. I don't think there's anybody that works at Tether or has any direct connection to Tether that really thinks they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And when the New York State Attorney General comes down on them, not only will the main players be arrested and probably face charges, whether they face charges in absentia and it takes time to find them is one thing. But even the guy that literally does like the accounting on the weekends for some shitty accountancy firm in the Bahamas or whatever is probably going to go to jail. Number 9 on the list of 10, Japan has FATF green light to create SWIFT network for crypto. You got to love these headlines. So the FATF wants to have a travel rule. They want to be able to track basically the ownership and about crypto across different transfers. So Japan has talked about creating something like SWIFT, which would be a messaging system outside of a blockchain. Basically would go probably messaging system, mempool blockchain that would track the movements of cryptocurrency, record them in some type of a reporting database, and then allow powers that be to understand who's moving what where. So does it mean they're going to do it? Does it mean they'll be successful? Does it mean that it's even possible to do right now with interpolarability across multiple chains, with privacy coins? All those are questions. But I think they will start. And eventually, guys, again, this market will become the traditional market, which means it will be traditionalized in many sense of the word. And this is part of that process. Number 10 on the list of 10, Chinese court rules that Bitcoin has legal value. Okay. It obviously is traded in an OTC market around the world. There is no central pricing authority, but you can take the aggregate price from major exchanges that have a lot of volume and get a price. So this is kind of just the Chinese courts not being able to say it doesn't have a legitimate price. They probably wanted to say it doesn't, but now there's lots of evidence to say it does. So a small victory for China. But also a small loss, because as you remember, the Chinese at one point were doing some legal maneuvering so that they would be able to seize. They called it property because they could seize it under property rights, meaning if you're convicted of a crime, they could seize your property, i.e. your Bitcoin. And now, if they can't get access to the Bitcoin, they have a price point from which they can seize other assets that aren't considered to be property. So always think about what governments do in hindsight, and let's say behind the scenes, guys, not just about what it looks like on paper. Okay, so let's just do 1 second here before I. Oh, sorry, guys, I just completely forgot. I have to send something out here real quick. Jesus. All right, never mind. Okay, done. Okay, so let's do this. Kevin Explains Crypto. So the term this week for Kevin Explains Crypto is ephemeral layer. So this is a unique one. So the word ephemeral, I think it's not Latin origin, which means it's probably Greek. Is a word that originates from the Greek language and basically means it doesn't last that long. It's basically what it means. It's a temporary, something that only lasts for a small amount of time. So ephemeral layer is a software layer that basically holds data that deletes itself. So it's mutable data. So I know that there's a company, I think it's QRL, quantitative something, some blockchain that's trying to be, that says that it's nothing will happen once quantum computing comes into place, right? That they'll be able to be quantum resistant. So here, it's basically a messaging system where the message only lasts long enough for the receiver to see it, and that could be a machine, and act upon it, and then it's deleted permanently. So that's what it is. There used to be an email company, actually, back in the day. I forget what it was called, but they had basically ephemeral email. You would send an email, and as soon as somebody viewed it for 30 seconds, it had this little GIF that would show it exploding, and it was gone. Because it was basically sent as an image, and the image was erased off a server after 30 seconds. So Anyway, ephemeral's been around for a long time in many different aspects in tech, but I guess ephemeral layer here, we're talking about a messaging system either on the blockchain or that directly corresponds to the blockchain that basically blows up at some point. It's like the old Mission Impossible. This message will self-destruct in X seconds, and there you go. So let's jump into live Q&A, and then I'll jump into some Reddit questions as well. Let me scroll back up here to see what's been asked. Any news on debit cards? Will there be tiers based on amounts of XCM you hold? So debit cards. So we're working right now to get some new designs up. We have a design that we made for the debit card last year, but I'm having a few more made now so that we can pick and choose. The first edition of the card will be plastic. Subsequently to that, we will release a metal card. The plastic card and metal card will have different pricing structures. And yeah, more than likely, we will have some type of scheme where holding of XCM will give you discounts on the purchase of the debit card, or maybe even a free card, as well as perhaps even discounts on fee structure as well. Musa, when will we be getting more devs on board to make the platform completely bug-free and fully robust? And when were we ramping up marketing to bring in more users? When we have more money. That's an easy one, Musa. So I'm working on that. We're pretty close, guys. So that's going to happen, I think, definitely within the summer. I think it could even happen in the next 2 weeks. That doesn't mean we can you can't hire people out of thin air, right? Here in Estonia, most people have to give 30 days notice, which means if we hire locally, even if we started hiring today, we wouldn't see people probably on the payroll till mid-August, which means we're probably talking September for a ramp up if we can see funds roll in the next few weeks. But yeah, one of the first things we are going to do when we do get funds is expand development, compliance, and support teams, and marketing as well. And then obviously actually start to do some marketing once we have someone in the role of CMO, so that we can start to really push out and get things done on that level as well. So what else is actually being released this month? Well, there's a long list of things that are being worked on, from XCM being included into the fee structure to some community aspects, community chat inside the platform, getting actually a token we've been talking about quite substantially here into our demo platform to show how it works on the testnet. There's a lot of things, guys, a lot of things. So I just stay tuned to those weekly newsletters, because I think we're getting more and more detailed on what's being worked on and what's being released every week. So just stay tuned to the newsletters. If you're not part of our newsletters, sign up. Public API status, yeah. So talked about this last week after the AMA with my CTO, and right now we have a fixed API and we have a let's say non-fixed API. Non-fixed API is ready to roll, but it's not documented. Fixed API is just about ready to roll. The fixed API in terms of being able to bring on market makers has been done for a while. That's how we have liquidity that comes in externally. But the a fixed API that is actually done so that people can connect, let's say a black box, or connect in from some other platform, et cetera, to trade, is almost done and also needs to be documented. So I think once we dive through margin posting, we will spend a bit of time to get both of those ready, which means 4 to 6 weeks from now, around that realm is when the API will be released. Any plans on having virtual credit cards as well, having sort of full range of Revolut services? From Daniel. So we won't be offering credit cards, they're debit cards. And yes, virtual will probably be part of the package, because most card providers already have APIs built in, especially because of PSD, PSD2 regulation here in Europe that requires sharing of information. So yeah, it'll probably be part of the package. Whether it gets released right away, it depends on demand, guys. A lot of people, I don't really know what the demand is industry-wide on virtual cards. I know even a lot of credit cards offer this for security reasons, so that you can use a different credit card number every time you make a purchase instead of the same one. But based on demand, it's definitely something we could offer. Though I would like to get away from cards at all. I know people like the physical card for some reason, but I think we're really talking about NFC, in-app payments, things like that, Google Pay, Apple Pay, and then our own app, rather than having to carry around cards, right? But so that's the eventual goal. Thanks for the birthday wish, Daniel. Appreciate it. Hadn't seen that. Well, hadn't seen this, Bjorn, about, let me see if I can find, give me a second while I pull this up. So crypto exchange BitMEX under investigation by the CFTC. Well, inevitable, guys. Inevitable. Because derivatives would fall under the CFT's guidance in the US, and I guarantee you they have US exposure. So reportedly being probed. The news appeared brief on Bloomberg Terminal soon before press release on Friday. That was soon followed by a report by Bloomberg citing sources who said the regulator is investigating whether the exchange allowed US traders to use its platform. Anyway, that's just a start, guys. I'm telling you that business model. You have the UK looking to basically outlaw derivatives on crypto, and it'll probably get passed. Because, guys, look, I'm on the fence on this in terms of let's say how I think this should be handled. But everybody should understand that your opinion when it comes to whether it's political or whether it's simple ideological is fucking meaningless, right? So ideologically, I would say that we're all adults and we should be able to do with our money what we want. And if you're stupid enough to do something with your money you don't understand and you lose it, and then you become homeless and have to beg for nickels on the street, well, that's your problem. Ideology. That's the ideology part of it. But when I take the other side, which is the regulation part, one of the only reasons the regulator is set up is to try and protect investors. That's one of their main mandates: protect investors. So when you're offering things that people don't understand, and they're high leverage, they don't understand the risks, and they lose in massive quantities, only to the real benefit of the platform owner. It'd be one thing, you know what, if 90% of all BitMEX's profits were circulated back to people who lost money. Yeah, they won't do that though, you know. So I think they will probably outlaw derivatives for retail traders. They did in every other market. And what does that mean for BitMEX then? And they're not regulating us. So anyway, it's the first story you hear about this. It won't be the last. Hello, Kevin. Any thoughts on security token offerings as a regulated platform? Would you be able to offer trading of securities alongside? So one of the main reasons to go into the sandbox, guys, for the MTF on CoinMetro side, multilateral trading facility, and the CSD on the infrastructure side is that we will have the only true native token capital market infrastructure. And that means security tokens, tokenized securities. That means listing of debt, which could be bonds, could be corporate bonds, it could be other types of bonds. It's equity, shares, shareholdings. We're talking about revenue share structures. We're talking about all types of different securities. So that is one reason we're going down that road. We would be the only complete ecosystem for a global capital market infrastructure for tokenized securities. If you don't understand how big that is, it's huge, 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 as our buddy Donald Trump would say in the U.S. The probability that tokenized securities become larger than the overall commodities futures, securities, and equities markets in the world is very, very possible. That's trillions and trillions and trillions, guys. It's huge, and it's a huge play. So when that's on one note. On the IEOs, I think next week we'll be ready to make a preliminary announcement about how our system is going to be set up, and who the first client will be on that system next week or the week after. So news is coming. Jet fuel. Is it still the plan to spend $700K on marketing? I think that was the original plan. Yeah, with 5 million, $700K was the original plan. Depending on the ticket size that comes in here, and we won't be able to spend $700K, but we will spend money. And when we get that larger ticket, that's more or less probably the amount of money we will spend initially. Yes, over maybe 6 months. No response from LHV, Daniel. I'm going to probe them a bit later today to see if we do get a response. I would expect we probably will get one. I don't know what kind of response. Maybe they haven't had time fully with the risk. Maybe we're going to get pushed to the next week's risk meeting. I don't know. But they are working on a framework so that we could self-assess these things, which means we wouldn't have to ask them permission. We just have to make sure internally that each asset meets that self-assessment guideline. That is the best thing we could have hoped for. So once that happens, that simply means that our internal legal will just go down the line and say, okay, this one fits, this one doesn't, this one fits, this one doesn't, and we can list them at our leisure. So I expect that to happen over the next weeks. And once that happens, that means no more waiting on the bank. In the context of API, Euros is asking, exchanges usually provide users with small access libraries in popular languages. Will this be the case? Yes. With the standard API, yes, you're talking about JavaScript, you're talking about, yes, Python, you're probably talking about C++, you're probably talking about, so yes, we will have small libraries and different codes. And then Fix is, well, Fix. So there is no library. Well, there's libraries attached. There can be libraries attached to Fix, but basically we would just probably give a list of open source Fix plugins or modules that can be used, like Quick Fix, which then allow you to tackle their libraries rather than us recreating them. Any news on the first fiat currencies, on the new fiat currencies? We're still working to see when we're going to have the official launch date of these currencies, but pound will probably be one of the first, followed probably by maybe Australian dollar, and then probably some Asian currency, maybe Singapore dollar. But we'll see, at least when it comes into tradability. I think pounds will probably be the first, though. USD, we're working on a solution for USD as well. We may have a very unique stablecoin offering that's from a company we've been in talks with that'll allow us to do a USD offering with a very unique stablecoin setup. So news on that coming over the next couple of weeks as well. We'll be offering instant SEPA withdrawals when withdrawing from CM in the future, or is that dependent on the user's bank, what they offer right now? We do have SEPA instant on withdrawals. Every SEPA transfer we send is SEPA instant. If it takes 2 days to reach you, your bank's not on SEPA instant. That's it. Lena asking for me to explain more about bonds. There's a little inside joke we have here about bonds. I can't get into it because it just won't be funny. Trust me, though, if you knew the inside joke, it's hilarious. But yeah, bonds are debt, basically. So, basically, if you could take your credit card debt and sell it to somebody else, you'd be selling them a bond. That's basically what a bond is. But yes, it does sound something really huge. Yes, it definitely is huge for the market and for us. Why are the people who invested in CoinMetro over the last few months more interested in getting a company share over getting a whole lot of cheap tokens? Do you know if there's some of them bought XCM? Well, there is now interest in tokens where there wasn't during, let's say, crypto winter. Not even guys who like tokens wanted tokens for the most part during crypto winter because they thought, this is, because they're not really most of these guys aren't investors, guys. They're just new. They're young guys who got in. They never invested in shares or equities. They just know about tokens, and tokens was this new thing, and they made some money. Then they started losing money, and then they started not liking tokens so much. Now they like them again. So even some more mature investors are definitely asking about tokens. However, if you believe a company is going to succeed and you see the writing on the wall and you see the possibilities for expansion, you're going to want a piece of that company if you're able to get one. Tokens are great, guys, but they can go on the open market and buy tokens. They can ask us for a discount, sure, if they wanted to. Whether we give it is another question. But you're going to want to share. What would you have rather had? Some Uber tokens for that 5,000 investment, or the shares, which are now worth that 5,000 investment something like $25 million? That's the question. So real investors usually want a piece, and revenue share is also a nice thing to offer. But some people are interested in tokens, and we have had some smaller tickets that included tokens as well. Hey, David. Full implementation of XCM for fees percentage burned will happen after we release the margin posting platform, which will probably be 4 to 6 weeks from now. That's the schedule. What are the average expected ROI on corporate debt? Sounds interesting. Well, that depends. There's all kinds of types of corporate debt. It depends on the risk of that debt. The higher the risk, the higher the return. It's just like if you go on like a peer-to-peer lending site, somebody that has a D credit rating, you might make 22% a year on. Guy that has an A credit rating, you might make 4, 5, 6. So it depends on the risk of the debt. Higher risk, you make more money. I think generally speaking, corporate debt, you're probably talking a range of 4 to 12%, somewhere in that range. Though it can range much higher depending on the toxicity of the debt. But the risk is also there. So, will I be able to link my bank account to CM in the future? I'm in the USA. Well, through some type of third-party provider that does ACH transfers, perhaps. But directly to CoinMetro, until, we are going through some processes in the US on the regulatory side, but until there's really a more national level regulation that applies to crypto, whether that's from the SEC on the issuance side and then the CFTC on the tradability side, probably not. But third-party integration through some type of service that provides, let's say, ACH transfer services to us, that's definitely a possibility. And we've actually already been looking into that. Does CM have support staff only in Talent, or are they spread around the world? They're spread around the world, so not just in Talent. Our level 2 support staff sits here. Level 1, however, is in different parts around the world. Jet fuel. So with this new sandbox and MTF license, will CM be marketing to institutions and not just crypto retail? Well, the CSD is definitely an infrastructure play, which means it's marketed towards issuers and counterparties. So that means people issuing tokens, whether that be individuals, whether that be companies, corporations, whatever, mostly companies and corporations. And it's also targeted toward counterparties like exchanges and other counterparties that deal in either clearing or liquidity of crypto or tokenized assets. When you talk about the MTF, it's still retail guys. All the institutional guys talk about, we got a STO platform and we have accredited investors. Who cares, man? I mean, accredited investors could give a rat's ass about tokenized securities because they can already gain access to all the private equity rounds anyway. So just make it a private equity round. They gain access. They don't care about the token. It's just a representation of rights anyway. And they understand that. So they could care less, right? Maybe they dip their toe in just to see. But if the thing wasn't tokenized, it wouldn't make any difference to them because it offers literally no benefit. Literally no benefit. Because there's already platforms out there where the accredited investors can sell private shares back and forth to each other. And they've been around for a long time. The real scope about this is getting access to retail liquidity pools with these tokenized securities. So the MTF will still be overly retail. That doesn't mean we won't allow institutional guys to come on or connect via the API and buy and sell, because issuers are in effect institutional, right, by definition. But it's still a retail front-facing platform, guys, and retail is huge. Institutional guys underestimate the power of the retail market. And the fact is they underestimate it because they never let them in. They don't let them in and they just make assumptions on how big it would be. But the ICO bubble showed us just how big it possibly can be. And that's with a massive learning curve. Imagine if there was no learning curve. Somebody could just press a button and could have invested in an ICO right from their bank account. Can you imagine the amount of money that would have flown in? Would have been substantially higher than what it was. Don't forget Reddit questions. Yep, about to jump over there right now. What kind of car do you have? I actually rent a car here, so I don't own a car in Estonia. And it's nothing spectacular. So it's a car that almost anybody else could drive. Let's see. Milhouse Van Houten on Reddit. With the upcoming virtual IBANs, I wonder if it would make sense to use CoinMetro as my bank account surrogate. Would it be feasible that my employer transfer my salary directly to my CoinMetro account, or do I understand the virtual IBANs incorrect, completely wrong? Would you be able to do that? Yes. Should you do it? Up to you. Obviously, those IBANs would be housed by a regulated entity, so they would be protected under the same insurance that any IBAN of that issuing country would be protected, meaning government insurance should anything happen to the issuer of those accounts. So there's really no difference in that respect by going to a bank. So sure, it could be used in that respect. There's no difference between a virtual IBAN and an IBAN account in terms of its functionality. It's just the definition of the back end of what's stored there. Rather than us storing euros in that wallet, we store virtual euros. It's a virtual representation of euros on an account, which, to be honest, is almost the exact same thing banks do. It's just the way that the EMI and payment institution licensing was structured. Milhouse Van Houten again. Hi, Kevin. Second question. And someone thing my grandmother always said, are you still looking to ways that would allow link staking? Staking with marketing is like getting a child. Don't wait for the best time to do it. Better start before it's too late. Starting, sorry. Starting with marketing is like getting a child. Okay. Do you think that CM services are soon in place in order to ramp up marketing? Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Soon is a relative term. I know everybody thinks that, a year or two in terms of business is like a century, because a lot of people that came into this, that this is their first investments in anywhere, were in crypto projects that either went to the moon or went to shit in 2 months. So 2 years seems like, outright ridiculous. But in real world, go back and look at any success story when in terms of whether you're looking at Amazon, Google, whether you're looking at Yahoo, which now might not be considered so much of a success, whether you're looking at, any large Tesco, look at any company that had to go and build massive infrastructure and kind of change the way things are done. Nothing was done in 2 years. That's for sure on the most part. Now, some people get lucky, but so you're right. Marketing is very important, but at the same time, if you're first out with a product, meaning that you have this product no one else has done, and it's not quite ready, or you want to improve it, you should start marketing it right away. You want to get that first mover advantage. If you're looking to get into a market that's already kind of saturated, but you're doing it in a different way, so we're coming at this from a fully regulated angle, and we're coming kind of to come from the bottom up and kind of take over a larger market share when regulation really starts to pinch all those other and it's starting, guys. That's already starting. And we're seeing that just on the article that Bjorn just threw up here about BitMEX. So it's a bit different, but I agree. Link staking, we use BitGo right now. It's impossible. They don't do staking, so we can't. However, at some point in the future, we'll have our own wallets. We do have to look at the regulatory angle. It's not a huge risk, but staking can be considered a regulated activity depending on how you look at it. It can look like a CIS, collective investment scheme. It can also kind of tie in the underlying asset as a security. Again, with an MTF license, that becomes meaningless. We can do it then because we're allowed to do it under the regulation. Nick Singh, hi Kevin. First of all, big compliment. I have never seen a founder or CEO communicate so openly and is so approachable. My question, can you give an update on user numbers? Telegram community seems to be quite active and stable. Even on other social media channels, numbers are growing, but I don't see if those numbers are a good indicator of real user numbers. They are a decent indicator. That doesn't mean we have the same amount of users, either more. It doesn't mean that number is the same as far as users and then users on social media. But when you see social media growth, we're also seeing very similar growth in terms of new user accounts. I think our largest to date month in new user accounts was roughly 2,000 new users. And that was, I think, the last month, I think this last month here, which was June, it was May to June, I think. But our numbers are increasing on average month to month, as our social media is also increasing. And thanks for the compliment. I appreciate it. During the last AMA, you mentioned that you will ramp up marketing. This is from Nixing again. Activities as soon as the platform and products are ready. Are we there yet? I see you are currently recruiting for marketing positions, and maybe you can tell us something about the ownership structure of CoinMetro, various fundings, new investors. So I've discussed that kind of all this already during this AMA. Do you still own a majority? I still own, I am still one of the majority shareholders. Yeah. I own more than a third of the company. And yeah, we are recruiting because we need new people. We still are waiting to get that larger ticket to push out marketing, but we're close, guys. We're very close. And once we do get there, you'll start to see marketing getting ramped up. Though it will be a process. Though we have to bring in some new people. That'll take a bit of time, but we're constantly looking towards the future, guys. We don't sit idle here, regardless of what some people might think. We're never idle on anything. When it takes time or not, it depends on what we're doing, right? It can take more time than we imagine. It can take more time than most people assume it would take. But at the end of the day, we're never idle. Yeah, not an S-Class, actually. It's a Skoda, just so everybody can calm down with the ideas. One of those is at TAM. Others are just waiting on the APIs. But the TAM, along with the addition of margin posting, will allow us to offer significantly more services, liquidity, and access to those guys. And that's why we're waiting. How is the fiat integration looking for the end of July, August? In terms of new fiat pairings, looking pretty good. I just want to see if we can automate the thing. I'd rather go into almost full automation right from the get-go. So I'm waiting on feedback from one of the tech providers that sits inside the loop between the actual issuing company and ourselves. And so waiting on that feedback. I should get that feedback hopefully next week, and then we'll decide. We can more fine-tune when it's going to happen, but it's in process. Yeah, yeah. Collaboration with Skoda. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I drive, guys. Gets me where I need to go, and that's all I need. Um, okay, guys, it's we're running up on 10 minutes at the top of the hour. If you guys have more questions, throw them out. I'll gladly take them. Blocks Live TV will come up right after the AMA, and I have a few things I need to do before I jump into Blocks Live. So I'd like to knock those things out, and I'll need a few minutes to do it. So if anybody has a question, throw it in. I'll give you guys another couple minutes, and then time to get on to some other things. When are we getting the new website? New website I've seen now, mobile and desktop renditions. I don't know exactly what the timeline looks like right now, but I think we're more than halfway there. So August for sure. I think exactly when in August, I don't know. Could be beginning, could be end, but August looks like it would definitely happen in August. I just don't understand if we're 30%, 70% of the way there. I think we're probably roughly 50%. That's my estimation, and it's been probably 3 weeks since that process really started. So that would mean another 3 weeks, which would put us in the first week of August. But just to give myself the benefit of the doubt, in August at some point, I think that new website will be released, and probably take another couple weeks after that to fine tune. People will find things. There'll be some comments. There'll be feedback that we'll take into account and make some amendments. So, what is your expected volume for the end of the year? It depends, guys. Sandbox goes well, it could be massive. Sandbox gets a little slower than we imagined. I still think, and I made this prediction roughly, probably by the end of the year, over 500,000 a day stable, with spikes maybe upwards of 1 to 1.5 million a day. I think, even if we continue down our current trek. Obviously, that also it's going to dictate what will dictate that a lot is the overall crypto market, what volumes look like, what sentiment looks like. Even without the MTF, tickets coming in and allowing us then to expand on market. Look, if we were doing marketing, guys, we'd probably have 10 times more volume right now, easy, very easily, even 20 times more with minimal marketing. And I know that. But again, even 10 to 20 times more isn't going to get us to a point where we're self-sustainable. That's why that money's being pushed into development. But we could easily have more volume, and we will have more volume. I can guarantee you there will be more volume. It's just we're picking and choosing our battles right now to make sure that we create the strongest company we can. Any ETA on the merge of the trading and margin platform? That's probably going to happen after margin posting is completed. At least it'll start once the mock-ups are done. And then once the development is done, development will carry over to that project. Close. Well, one of those big tickets could happen in days. The other one may be a couple weeks. XCM will be fully integrated with fees after margin posting is released. So 4 to 6 weeks from now, roughly. Thanks, Glenn. All right, guys. So as usual, have a great weekend. Spend time with friends and family. Do something fun. Don't look at prices, or look at prices, however you want to do. Buy up some XCM. Get some for the kids. With margin posting, will we get higher leverage? You mean, that's the goal. Yes. Even without margin posting, higher leverage is the goal. We just need enough statistics so that we can understand how high we can push it and keep the negative balance risk on our side to a minimum. Times 100 is not going to happen. Look, under rules in the EU in terms of retail clients, most of the time you're going to be limited at 25 to 1 on most assets. So we would stay within that realm. That would probably be the high we would be able to offer unless you're not a retail guy. So anyway, guys, like I said, have a great weekend. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the great questions on Reddit. Thanks for the news aggregation, guys, as always. Thanks for being here on YouTube and sharing a little bit of your day with me. I appreciate that. And thanks for the well wishes as well. And I'll see you guys next week. I'll jump into Telegram as usual. Spend a bit of time there when I can over the weekend. Tag me if you have any questions that maybe weren't answered here. And yeah, we'll keep killing it, Daniel. That's what we do. Behind the scenes, trust me, there's always something going on, and lots and lots of really cool stuff coming, guys. Lots and lots. I'll be in Montenegro next week, Thursday and Friday. So the AMA will probably come from Montenegro. Either that or it'll get delayed till Saturday next week. We'll see how we do it. But I guarantee there'll be lots of news coming out of that little trip. So thanks, guys. Chat soon. Have a great weekend. See ya.